This is the DRF Players Podcast. Here are your hosts, Peter Thomas Fornatel and Jonathan Kinchin.
I like it so much better when I get to hear the music as I'm coming on the air. Hello and welcome to the DRF Players Podcast. This is show 322, the March 30th, 2018 edition. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatel, back with you once again live, like actually live, not as live, once again in the Brooklyn bunker, and once again joined by my co-host. You know him, you love him. He's the people's champion, calling in from Planet, Texas. He is Jonathan Kinchin. JK, what's up?
What's going on? Yeah, I don't know about the love him part. I've continuously tell people that one of the best ways to get qualified for contests is to play in head-to-heads. Well, I've run into a few listeners of late, and although I was 0 for on Wednesday, I didn't run into any listeners. And then yesterday I had a good day and ran into some listeners. So sorry about that.
He's going full heel, folks, saying, "Oh, come on, play in these contests," and then trying to beat up on you. Very nice. How about the one the other day, folks? So I wasn't paying attention. I'm in the UK. I'm doing 17 million things, and he's like, "Hey, Pete, I think we can get this. I think we can get this Keeneland contest to go. Like, make sure you retweet. I really, it'd be great if it goes." I'm not paying attention. I just blindly do it. I put even going so far as to point out the potential overlay if only 9 of 10 people go. Anyway, the game ends up falling short. But I log on and see JK really was desperate to get this game to go because of the entries that signed up, 3 of them were from him. Meanwhile, I looked at the other Keeneland game, which did fill. This specific Keeneland game is like 10 only. It doesn't expand to include more numbers. They just open a new game limited to 10 only. So first of all, what were you thinking not getting in the first game? And second of all, what gives? You're trying to get me to line up people for you to play against now? That's my job?
No. I was running around Cincinnati, so I didn't know if I was definitely going to play for sure. And then I decided that I was going to play. The first one had already filled, so I got 1 entry. And then I thought to myself, like, well, maybe people aren't tying their money up because they don't feel like it's going to go. I really wanted it to go. I liked the card, which I actually did horrible with, so I'm glad it didn't go. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to get 2. I'll just buy 2 more to make it look like it's closer. And then I'm fine with the fact that it's 3 entries versus 10 for, I'll spend $900 and whatever it is dollars for a $3,000 seat. Like, whatever, I'll try it. It still seems like it's okay math. I had qualified, done well last week. So anyways,
you're feeling short.
Didn't go down.
Gotcha. Well, you got to be on the ball about these things. You can't be. You got to get in that first one. The early bird catches the worm. But it sounds like in addition to everything else you owe me in terms of plucking you from obscurity and all that, I feel like I should get at least 15% of the $1,000 that I saved you.
Like you just slid in plucking you from obscurity.
Plucking from obscurity. Yes. And I'll put you back there too. If you don't walk the line here.
You brought me into this world, you'll take me out?
I'm kidding, of course. We have so much stuff to yap about today. There's a lot of absurd stuff going on Twitter, including seemingly JK picking a fight with Andy Serling on there. But we'll put a pin in that. We'll get to it later. There's so much good racing this weekend. I want to talk about the racing, and then we will come back and do. It's not nonsense. We actually have some good questions and interesting things to talk about, but I don't want to. If we just start talking, like I could easily go the whole hour just talking today, and I don't want to give the racing short shrift. Let's start with the stuff that's coming up in the morning. Very interesting Dubai World Cup night. I went into it in great depth in a webinar, handicapping session, whatever you want to call it, that's going to be posted shortly at drf.com/YouTube with Mark Milligan of Timeform and Marcus Hirsch of Daily Racing Forum. Tons of great info from their various perspectives. I encourage everybody to look at it thoroughly. We're not going to go through every race, but I had a few strong opinions that I thought, JK might have a few strong opinions. So I figure we should at least just talk about the races that we're going to bet. And for me, the first one of those would be the UAE Derby. Did you have anything? Do you have a strong fancy in the Arabian race or anything early on the card?
Oh, the Arabian race, of course. That one always gets me going. No, I didn't have. The only look, I think we always with these races we always look and to see the horses whose names we recognize, and unfortunately, I think that sometimes the pools that we're able to participate in when it comes to these racing are a little bit skewed in that situation. So you don't really get a ton of value on betting the American horses. I thought economic model was going to be tough in the Godolphin Mile, but like I said, there's really no value there. 7-2 morning line, I think, is not accurate. The horse is going to be bet, so just see what happens. But if you're up and you're looking for action, I think he's one to definitely consider.
Okay, fair enough. But at a point well taken. My horse in the UAE Derby is one of those ones that Americans are going to be familiar with. But I think the way that this shakes out, he might still be decent price in the USA pools. I was able to bet him while over there at 12-1. And I'm talking about Re-Ride in the UAE Derby. Gold Town's been amazing in the prep races, as Marcus Hirsch pointed out on our handicapping session, one of the stars of the carnival to this point. Or maybe that was Mark Milligan who pointed that out. But anyway, they both acknowledged the obvious excellent work he's done in the prep races. But I'm just concerned that this is a case, a proverbial beating trees situation, and maybe even beating trees with the aid of a bias. Any discussion of these races tomorrow has to be looked at, any analysis has to be looked at through the lens of the prevailing bias this winter in Dubai, which has been super strong. Rob Dove, one of the top 10 pro punters in the UK today, kept stats on it, and he had 58% of the dirt races going to front runners on the rail. That's dominant stuff. And if those are the conditions, you're going to have to look at these dirt races very much with that in mind. So just something to keep in mind throughout the day. Before the Derby, we'll have the mile, the race that JK mentioned, that economic model's in, to look at for a little bit of line of form. I would assume the Arabian race, too, you'd have an opportunity to at least see if it looks like it's a conveyor belt on the inside. But anyway, Re-Ride for me is the one I'm interested in here. I think that Gold Town makes a ton of sense, but is too short. Mendelssohn, absolute chance, probably about a 2-1 chance. We'll see what price he's going to be in the market in the USA. Amazing story. Be great to see him win. Be really cool to have him coming to Kentucky as a legitimate contender given his form and his bloodlines. But I just think well over at 12-1. Obviously, he got the big form boost last weekend with Runaway Ghost coming back, who he'd handled easily in the Mind That Bird, and then Runaway Ghost winning the Sunland Derby pretty easily. The horse is tactical, lone American runner in the field. Has some questions to answer, but 12-1, just too big. Did you have a chance to look at the Derby at all, JK?
Well, yeah, I mean, just to pile on to your key race theory that you have going for Re-Ride. If you look at the only loss on Re-Ride's record, it's in the Kentucky Jockey Club at Churchill as a 2-year-old. And if you notice some of the horses that were in there, you've got Enticed, the winner of the Gotham. Tis Mischief, which is a nice horse in his own right. Promises Fulfilled, the winner of the Fountain of Youth. Lone Sailor, second in the Louisiana Derby. Quip, the winner of the Tampa Bay Derby. I mean, I can keep going if you want me to. Bravazzo, the winner of the why am I going blank? Of course, I was rolling them off too good to not be.
Why it was a Louisiana prep.
Don't tell me yet. Just give me the Risen Star. Thank you. Whew.
There you go.
Took me a while.
You can take the bingo square there if you want.
Key race for Re-Ride. Obviously, he's one that I would definitely consider in this spot. Mendelssohn's going to take a lot of money. I think a lot of people are excited to see Mendelssohn trying the dirt for the first time based on the pedigree there that you mentioned, the half to Beholder and also Into Mischief. So we'll see what happens.
It's going to be a cool race. It's actually one of the more fun races on the day. I know the Japanese horses have had success in this race in the past. Doesn't seem like the strongest Japanese contingent this year. I'm going to be trying to fade them. We'll see what kind of work we can get done there. What's the next race that you have a thought in, JK?
I guess probably the Golden Shaheen.
That would be me too. The Alquaz is interesting. Got a hot favorite there in Blue Point who looks live, but there was a hot favorite there last year too who ended up going down, and then you almost had Long on Value winning at 100-1 in the UK market, though probably 6-1 in the USA. It was quite a rick, as I recall. But anyway, that's a complicated race. The guys in the webinar had a lot of great thoughts if folks want to check that out. But yeah, for me, it's the Golden Sheen, and I'm sure we have the same opinion here, and I'll give it to you.
Yeah, you know what? I guarantee we don't.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've been off, and I actually think Mind Your Biscuits is going to run better this time. The horses run well over there, obviously, before, as you looked to last year winning by 3.
Exactly.
Going in the right direction, should get enough pace to close into with XY Jet in there. Obviously, the Jorge Navarro trainee is gonna go straight to the front. And if he's not to the front, they're going really fast. Should be able to save ground with Joel. I don't know. I just think this horse is going to make an interesting run. And I think that he could be the third American being bet. There should be a lot of value on him in American pools, which is probably the only pool you'll really be able to get down in. So I think Mind Your Biscuits is interesting. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the Breeders' Cup sprint winner Roy H and XY Jet are two horses that I definitely wouldn't discount or have anything against. I just think that Mind Your Biscuits might be a little ignored.
It's all about the bias for that one. I was assuming too far back with the way the track has been playing. However, if it tilts and it's something that's more like you need to be inside, but it's not so much about where you're positioned, I agree that Mind That Biscuits could be the beneficiary. The horse I was going to tip was XY Jet just off the bias because he just seems very obvious to me that he's going to get the lead. And Roy H, obviously more of a stalker, might be good enough to just go ahead and win anyway. But I was thinking XY Jet offered value if you can get the 5-2. I'd give him. I think he and Roy H could potentially run around the track and form your exacta. But if they hook up too early, if it's more about inside than it is front, I wouldn't talk you off the Mind That Biscuits opinion. I mind your Biscuits opinion. I will throw out, and you don't have to say yes, but I will throw out a head-to-head for you, XY Jet versus Mind That Biscuits. It's kind of an interesting one. I think it's actually, even though the prices will be different, I think it's fair value to do it as an even money head-to-head, simply because XY Jet also has that complete blow-up potential. But
I'm good with it because I'm of the belief when it comes to bias that it's not so much a speed and close thing. I think it's more of a path thing, and you just happen to see more speed types on the rail, and you happen to see more closers wide. I just think that's. I don't think it's. I think more of the times it's the path, and I think that Mind Your Biscuits will be right down there on that good inside that you talk about. Rob Dove pointing out top 10 pro punters in the UK today. That was a little Eric Bialik love. He loves it when you do that. So no, I think that I'll take it. Mind Your Biscuits rolling late on XY Jet.
I got one. Excellent. We'll think about what the prize is going to be for our head-to-head. But I wanted to point out I got that on UK television. I got that on At the Races the other night because Dove. It was a funny race too because it was a handicap race, and before you can get a handicap mark in the UK, you've got to have something like 3 runs. So we could do a whole show on the differences between the American system, the claiming system, and the handicapping system, and the pros and cons of both and each. But just to keep the story not to be half the show, this race there were several horses who'd only run in maidens, and so hadn't gotten a handicap mark yet. And what you'll see a lot of the time is horses, let's just say, not giving their all in the maiden races to get a more lenient handicap mark. So then certain barns in particular will look to bet these horses when they appear first time with a handicap mark. And Dove had found one that looked for all the world like this, just like a horse who, didn't really break that well, not pushed from the gate, taken wide, and then when the wide position would have been potentially advantageous to make a run through the lane, was guided in behind horses and not really asked. It was just a very obvious, trying to get a handicap mark type trip. And first of all, I was nervous about even talking about this on UK TV. I didn't know if I did come off, it'd be kind of a bad look to go on USA TV and be like, yeah, they didn't even try with that horse last time. And so I tried to say it in coded language, and judging from the sly smiles of my co-hosts, they agreed, or at least it was, an acceptable thing to say the way that I said it. The horse ended up winning, but I couldn't take the plaudits. I had to give props to Rob Dove, one of the top 10 pro punters in the UK today, when they asked me about how I, the more specifics about the horse. But I was just very proud that I got that on there, and I'm sure Eric smiling.
Over there on their team, you mentioned like Paul or Mike. Mike Malone, one of the 10 pro punters in the UK.
I've never done. I'm going to start. I'm going to start because I certainly did talk about. They were very generous in letting plug betting edge, and I was able to sell a few copies. Kind of cool. Now that folks can go onto the UK version of Amazon and just that book instead of paying absurd amounts of money to ship to the UK. So that was very. But anyway, back to Dubai. There was actually another point. Oh no, decide on the head prize is going to be. Last time we did the dump at Din Bung. What's the Lexington equivalent of
that? Of the dumpings, Din Tai Fung, Lexington, we do Josie's breakfast, which is always exciting.
That's a good one. We'll do a breakfast Josie's on this head-to-head. I like it. Was going to be that. It was going to be some pies and pints, I think, at our which we have to hit this trip through as well. We actually had a question about Lexington lifestyle stuff. We're going to, same deal, put a pin in it. We'll come back at the end of the show. We also had a good Saratoga lifestyle question we'll hit today if there is time. But meanwhile, let's stick with the Dubai card. I don't have anything strong yet on the big turf races. I was ready to go to the Dubai World Cup. Where are you next on this card?
Yeah, I'm still boycotting turf internationally and domestically, so we can go on to the Dubai World Cup.
Oh my God, this is not a good time in horse racing to be boycotting turf, especially if you're playing in contests. But anyway, Dubai World Cup. Who's your selection here?
Yeah, I mean, West Coast looks like he's going to be super, super tough, but there's a bunch of interesting ones in here, right? I mean, I think Thunder Snow is one that I would, try to get cute with. Pavel is one I would like to try to get cute with. Even Gunnevera is one that I would like to try to get cute with. But West Coast just looks too tough on I think we should point out to people that are interested in getting down on Dubai tomorrow morning. Timeform US, is one of my favorite tools for that because there's actually figures for every horse, and there's still trip notes and everything for every horse that was that has been running in Dubai and even some of the European races. Like Thunder Snow's last trip note is like it's almost it is a paragraph. Just as an example, so you know what you're getting into. A time form was strictly below form, but best to give him a pass given how things panned out. I mean, it's that kind of descriptive.
He was a victim of the bias last time. I think he's going to be the victim of the bias again here. I thought Mubtahiz was interesting to put him running in under West Coast. Just, use your close personal friend Bob Baffert's 2 here and lock them into the number with West Coast on top. West Coast could get hurt by the bias. Baffert didn't sound that concerned about it. It seemed like they'll probably go ahead and stalk North America, but he's probably good enough that it doesn't matter. He could also just get the lead if he wanted it, I believe, based on his talent and class. So I think he's just... I wouldn't spend much money trying to beat him. When you're talking about mixing in these other horses, you're talking about strictly underneath, only 9s on the top of the ticket, JK, or would you use any of these other runners differently?
No, I mean, I think there's a way we've talked about it before where if you're playing multi-race bets or if you're playing, exactas and tries where you build a majority of your play through West Coast, but then you also have a lower denomination through the other ones. I think that one of the dumbest things you could do would be like to use Pavel, Thunder Snow, Talismanic, Mubtahiz, Gunnevera, Forever and Bridal equally with West Coast. You would want to do just for the sake of ease and conversation, a $50 double into West Coast and then a $5 double into the other ones. I think you would want to try to push it in that direction. So No, I wouldn't use those horses equally, but I think that West Coast is going to be tough. Forwardly placed, it's a Baffert horse. We know what Baffert does. Whenever there's doubt, he just puts them on the lead, and West Coast, like you said, is capable of getting there. He did in the Travers.
That's right. That's right. It's been done before. It could be done again. So it did seem interesting that there was a Baffert quote about where it just sounded like he wasn't sweating it regarding the potential bias, but he could also be just whistling there. You know, you don't necessarily want to let everybody know what your game plan is.
Essentially, West Coast is always on the lead when Gunrunner's not in the race, but can you blame him? Why would you want to be a target for that monster when you could sit behind him? So it makes a ton of sense.
All right, it'll be interesting. It's going to be a great morning of racing. I'm looking forward to it. I've got this ancient rotisserie league, JK, that I play in. Do you even know that term, rotisserie?
Yeah, but I'd be embarrassed of what I'm thinking it's in reference to.
Fantasy baseball is basically how it evolved to be known, but long time.
I thought it had something to do with chicken spinning on a stick.
Well, it did. See? It did. There was the original league, the one that gave it that name, was these guys. Most of them were in publishing. I knew a few of them back in the day. And there was a restaurant that was called like Le Rotisserie, which was, I guess, some French place that I'm assuming had a rotisserie and probably cooked chicken. And they would do their draft there for whenever that started in the early 80s. A friend of mine started this league after reading about that one in about 1985. I joined in 1996, and I've been the commissioner for about 10 years. So the bad news for me on Saturday is I'm going to be super duper distracted. So I'm going to just try to put in those Dubai bets, watch the races, and hopefully get involved in this pick six at Gulfstream and be able to just follow along without actually having to think or make decisions. This is something that is going to be familiar for a lot of racing fans who also play in these leagues. You often have to sacrifice a big Saturday when you can't be sort of Johnny on the spot. But that's where it's good to have partners, and that's where it's good to be able to do your work ahead of time. Now, this Gulfstream card, how do you want to handle it? Do you want to look at, well, I definitely want to look at race 8. So we could start there, unless you had anything before.
Yeah, let's just go through the pick 7, huh?
There you go. The pick 7 that doesn't really exist. I was getting an echo there for a second, Craig. I'm not sure if that's something you can do something about, but it's gone now. Let's go on. We have the return to the races of Always Dreaming. I'll just start off asking it this way, JK. What do you think the odds are he's still a horse?
I'd say probably 9-5 that he's not.
Wow.
That's his morning line. No, I'm just joking. This is one of those races where we've talked about it before. It's like I got to see the workout report, and when I see the workout report, it's going to tell the story. One of the good things about when it comes to a Pletcher horse is that his good ones typically are working with other good ones, and that's one of the advantages that he has. He gets to kind of stack them up against each other. So I would assume that Always Dreaming hasn't just been working by himself all the way through this lead up back to the races. So we'll know kind of where he stands when that comes out. It usually comes out midday today. I don't think it's up yet. I'll check while we're chatting, but I don't think it's up yet. Irish War Cry I thought was good last time. I mean, I was a little bit unfortunate that he got beat, but I think that maybe he needed the race, and I think it's an interesting race between those two. Right now, if I had to make the wager, I would bet on Irish War Cry. But we will see what to expect from Always Dreaming after we take a look at the workout report.
Give me Irish War Cry. Wasn't expecting all that much last time. Ran well, given everything. Should step up second time off the layoff. Going to try to keep it simple. I'll say this. So much of the market's going to be tilted towards Always Dreaming and Irish War Cry. If you want to make an opinion for one of the others, and these aren't tomato cans running against them, you might have a chance to get paid. If forced to pick anybody other than Always Dreaming or Irish War Cry, which direction would you go in?
I mean, I've always been a little bit of a sucker for Conquest Big E. I think he's a little bit more of a kind of a morning glory. He always seems to kind of show up well in the workout report to kind of insinuate that he might run better. But he also had kind of a weird trip last time. He had some trouble, and there was a spill in the race. So there's a possibility that he could find his way back. And then Mr. Jordan was another one that I wanted last time on the cut back to 6.5. and he just was wide all the way around there. Didn't really make an impression. Now he gets an actual mile to close into, with horses kind of maybe not ding-donging, but at least looking each other in the eye on the front end. One of those two for me, Mr. Jordan or Conquest Biggie.
All right, let's move on to this pick six. Full disclosure, I didn't do much on the 9th or the 10th, so I'll leave those to you. How do you want to get this thing kicked off?
Well, I'll just kind of reiterate what I did on Out of the Gate, which was kind of I tried to give a horse over 5-1 in every spot that I think people should take a look at. So I think we all kind of are aware of 9 to 5, right? Art collection. If you're playing the pick six, it seems like one you're probably going to want to include. Ran well first time. We're first time out for Chad. Now switches to Dickey. Interesting how that happened, but the 4 for me, Logic, I thought was interesting. Blinkers on. Weird Trip last time was wide all the way around there.
Middle move.
Yeah, middle move, wide. All of those things are things that catch my attention. Had a little bit of pace to close into, but it wasn't an absolute shocker. Interesting enough, as a half the Shaman Ghost, which is interesting. It seems like the longer the better. Point of entry, there a lot of stamina in there, but sure. I think that this horse will obviously appreciate the extra 16th of a mile. I don't think that's the difference that the breeding is screaming for, but it's definitely one that I think can improve moving into this spot. This is a tough spot, and I think it's important for us to also talk about what point was trying to be made. What I agreed with Andy Sterling. I wouldn't fight with Andy for one reason. Because I think that he's like a tireless fighter. I don't think I could outlast him. I don't think he would ever give up. He's the kind of guy I wouldn't want to fight in an alley. He's a little bit relentless, isn't he? No. So my point is that racetracks think, let's give them a 14 horse maiden race. It's completely.
You need to back up and explain what you're talking about, because 90% of the listeners who don't, follow you and Andy on Twitter know even what you're talking about.
Okay, I'm back up.
I was going to do this at the end, by the way, but if you want to do it now, let's just do it now.
Well, I think it's important because we're looking at the race, right?
Fair enough.
Andy simply pointed out that he thinks that it's a little bit that he didn't really like the idea that these racetracks try to make these like crazy difficult races to start off the pick six, when they could have easily used the 8th race, the 6-horse quality, always dreaming Irish war cry types, because they feel like it, they want to make it a more impossible puzzle. But the problem is that hurts the little guy. That makes it harder for the little guy to play, because you got to use 6, 7, 8 horses in this spot, and now you're slanting the table towards the big player with the big bankrolls, the syndicates, the computer guys, the big groups. And I agree with that. And I don't think that just because there's 11 horses in the field and it's a maiden race and it's a better betting race, it's a more confusing race with less information to make intelligent decisions based on, based off of what you have. And I don't think that that's the answer to making these big carryovers be what they are.
Well, typically you and me, you put a little more positive spin on it. I'll be very cynical. It's greed, and it's really cynical marketing, and it's gross. They market this rainbow stuff as if it's some bet where the little guy can come in and make his big hit, and really what it's doing is funneling money from the little guy, tying it up for months at a time, and setting it up on a silver platter for professional level players and the groups. And this is yet another example of that, where in this first leg, I don't think they're trying to make a good betting race. I think they're trying to make a race that's going to give them more handle, because even at the 20-cent increment, or maybe precisely because of the 20-cent increment, people are going to probably bet the total handle of the bet will probably be more with this inscrutable race. Well, not inscrutable exactly, but with this 11-horse maiden in there, rather than with the horses that everybody's familiar with in the previous allowance race that we just saw. And when they market the bet as a bet for little players and then do this, it just makes my teeth itch, JK. I don't like it one bit. I agree 1,000% with Andy. I guess, is it possible your tweet just wasn't the best written tweet of all time, that people thought you were taking Andy on with what you were saying? Because honestly, I just had no idea what you were saying.
Yeah, no, I thought I was tweeting and driving. It was dangerous.
Dangerous for more reasons than one, apparently.
Yeah, tweeting and driving, and when you have numbers mixed in with, like, it's hard when you have, like, 11 horse field, 6 horse. It just gets confusing.
So you meant to basically be you were just seconding that emotion.
Exactly, I agree. I don't like it. I prefer, I think what the first tweet I said was essentially that, like, 11 horse maiden doesn't mean good betting race.
Gotcha.
And I think that, like, some people think that means good betting race, and it doesn't, because there's usually 5 horses that you can throw out, right? And then there's 6 horses that you can't figure out what they are anyway.
People have different definitions of betting race. The first definition I ever heard of good betting race, the 11 horse maiden, might be a good betting race, because, like, the first definition I ever heard is, well, where even if you bet the favorite, you're going to get back $9 or $10 to win. Now, that is not the definition of a good betting race to me, but I can see where one, like, if you were just looking at the racing fan not as a horse player trying to participate and get an edge, but just as somebody looking for a gambling experience, like, yeah, I guess it's a better gambling experience for just the average Joe to have a situation where you win and you get back at least, 7-2 or 4-1. But for your real audience, the actual horse players, that's not what makes a good betting race. To me, I'd prefer a good betting race. I can throw out half the field, including the 9-5 favorite. I'm not saying our collection is a toss here at all, by the way, but you know what I mean? Like, to me, a good betting race is any race where I can get an edge.
Chaos to me is not a good betting race.
Right. I agree. Some would disagree. Some love the chaos. Some contest players, especially, you'll see some who've tailored a whole methodology, and God bless them, to finding contest races and coming up with certain angles where they can find these, cap type horses. And for mythical money contests, that's what you need to win. And that's great. Some of this is horse for course, but, horse players for courses, essentially. Different strokes for different folks, whatever you want to call it. But what I really don't like is when you market a bet as being for the little guy and then put in a race that's demonstrably bad news for the little guy.
And the only reason that you put it in there is so that you have an increased chance of having that big, $6 million payout, so that you can advertise that to suck in more little guys to play in the race.
Exactly. Well said. All right. Well, we handled that pretty well. I just wanted to talk about Logic, the horse, not the concept, for another second here. You made it sound a little bit like you thought he got a setup, but to me, looking at the way the pace line and the pace figures go and when he made his move in the race, I look at the pace there as a reason to upgrade him, not to downgrade him, because a move was made into those sort of uneven red-coded fractions on Timeform US. So I look at him as an upgrade in those terms, not a downgrade. Agree or disagree?
Yeah, no, I don't think. I just didn't want to give the impression they were crawling on the front end and when he was closing. That's all.
Gotcha. But I think sometimes it's useful, especially when you have pace figures like the ones you'll find in Timeform US, to look at when they made the move and to upgrade horses who make moves into the fast parts of races. Because very often you can't see it. It might look like that horse eventually hung or whatever, but really, very often they can have done more running than it looks like, and that information doesn't always get factored into the market.
Absolutely. I completely agree.
Let's move on to race 10. Haven't even looked, JK. What did you come up with here?
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough one. I mean, I think that there's a lot of, like, kind of logical uses. I feel like this is a little bit of a kind of a spread. Obviously I'm going to use horses like Outplay and I think Ready for Rye and the Weekend Hideaway. But I'm going to give a little look to Rockefellers for Jorge Navarro. That horse was buried down on the inside, showed a ton of speed last time, going 6.5. Now they're stretching out to 7, which is one of my favorite things. I think speed does better at 7, obviously, than 6.5. And I think speed does better at 6 than at 6.5. I think 6.5 is kind of that weird middle distance where I think you can, that extra half furlong is kind of interesting for a closer. So I'm going to use Rockefellers at 20-1. I think that horse could be tough. Jorge Navarro obviously is dangerous on the front end in South Florida. And I think that this horse is one that could potentially get loose. I do know there's other speed in here, but he is definitely the speed of the speed. And let's see if he can get out there and get brave on the front end. It happens at least once a day, it feels like, at Gulfstream where someone gets brave. Why not him at 20-1?
Well clear on Timeform US in a race coded as favors horses on or near the lead. Now, you'll have to explain that. So you're saying 6.5, 6 good for speed, 6.5 good for closers, but then 7 good for speed again? I think I know what you mean, but you can't just throw that out there and not explain.
All right, so the most run races in America are 6 furlongs. Everywhere. Okay, you think about all these jockeys, they've run more races at 6 furlongs than anything else they've ever done in their entire life. So I think that when they go 6, I think their clocks are pretty good. I think they have a pretty good, internal clock of what's going on. And I think at 6 speed, I think being forwardly placed is advantageous. Now, look, it's still a sprint, right? I think that 6.5 it being on the front end still is an advantageous place to be. However, I do think that there's more opportunity to mistime the pace on the front end and set it up for closers. I also think that closers kind of get that extra half to kind of pick up and find. Now, when it goes to 7, this is just a theory I developed at Santa Anita, and it's kind of worked elsewhere. Is that it to me that I feel like horses are less aggressive because they know they're going 7. So those 6 furlong horses that are stretching out are trying to ration their speed a little bit, and they take back. And I think that horses get easier leads going 7 in some situations than they normally would, and then they're harder to reel in. I know I'm not saying I would write a book about the whole concept or that I would have a system that I bet it blindly. It's just a feel that I have when I'm looking at the race. I'm not saying I won't take a speed horse at 6.5, but I give closers a little bit more consideration going 6.5 than I do going 6 and 7.
It makes perfect sense. I think it's a really interesting theory. We could probably find somebody to pull up some data on it actually and take a look. But intuitively, I get what you're saying. You did say one thing where you said something about horses being more aggressive at 7, and I assumed you meant jockeys.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Just the way the clock works in their head, they're much more conscious of, okay, 7, I'm going to have to stay here. I'm going to ration that speed in a way that maybe at 6.5, they're like, the heck with it. Speed's my weapon. Let's rock and roll. All right, let's move on to the Honey Fox here as we move into this graded stakes. Pick 4 that closes out the Gulfstream card. I had half an idea in this one, JK, that you can tell me if you think I'm crazy or not. With plenty of speed signed on, I was wondering if it didn't seem like it might set up a little bit for number 6, Grizzle, and not just because the name sounds like old Carney Sling.
Yeah, no, I think Grizzle's definitely one. Closing into a slower pace last time. It's always tough to do when you're at Gulfstream. But if you're looking for the closer, for me, if you're looking for the closer, On Lead's going to be pretty tough in here. That horse is always kind of been there, has obviously got the job done a few times, but it's a very pace dependent style. It feels, it always feels like but she sometimes gets herself into the race. I think she'll be tough in this spot. I'm gonna use the inside horse a little bit, Gloria to Kitten, second off the claim for Abreu and Michael Dove. It's obviously a really sharp claiming operation. I thought that last race was pretty good down here at Gulfstream, closing into a pretty, not a crawl, but a pretty slow pace. I think that horse will be tough in here if they can get a good trip saving ground. Lowell, obviously, you're going to want to use. I saw on Twitter Stormy Victoria is that one going to run? Do you know?
I did not see an update on that.
I'm not 100% sure. I just don't want to waste people's time handicapping. If you're handicapping this race, jump on Twitter, search Stormy Victoria. I'll try to search it while we're talking, but I think they might skip and go somewhere else. I read that. I could be wrong, but this is a tough spot. This mile race on the turf, I find this to be a much more competitive and handicapable race than what they started the sequence with.
My fear with On Leave, who's obviously super duper logical, was just obviously, trip and post and all that stuff. I suppose a scratch or two inside would help the cause. You're not concerned about that? You think she'll be? I mean, I'm not saying I'd leave her off the pick six. I'd certainly use, but I would want one or two backups in here for sure.
Well, let me tell you why I'm laughing. Then I'll answer your question. I'm laughing because I went to Twitter and searched Stormy Victoria, and the first 27 things I see are Stormy Daniels. So we'll have to put like racehorse or something.
The dangers of searching. Can't wait for those horse names to start coming down the pike, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Unbelievable.
I just thought my case against On Leave was so bad, and you were so sure she was going to win that it brought you to mirth.
No, I think that funny things like a horse like that who can take back. I feel like it's easier for them to not end up going 3 or 4 wide in the first turn. Gotcha. So I'm not too worried about it. Now there likely will have to be a circle late because I don't see how the horse can get to like the pocket where they can sit inside and then tip out when they get to the stretch or find a seam in the 2 or 3 path. I mean, from the 10 hole, you just kind of always feels like you're going to circle 4 or 5 wide, but she might be good enough to do that.
All right, let's move on here while you look for that information, JK, and you can loop back to it when I throw it back to you if you want. Let's loop back to the Gulfstream Park Oaks, where I'm going to steal a horse that I think you're going to pick just to give you more time to look up Stormy Victoria, not Stormy Daniels. And that's number 4, Cash, in this spot, who was part of our last head-to-head wager. And it just seemed like had enough of an excuse against a good-looking winner and a horse who should, in my view, continue to move forward and look like a really strong price for Mark Hennig at 8-1. Was Cash who you were going to go with here in the Gulfstream Park Oaks, and what did you find about Stormy Victoria?
Yeah, I'm still searching. I'm going to give. I'll probably include Cash in some ways in this situation, whether it be probably more of a B. I expected her to run better. You're right there. I mean, there's legit enough
trip excuses.
Yeah, a bit tight, but nothing. Not a huge trip, right? Not a huge bias situation, but definitely one that I would consider and use a little bit. But Princess Warrior kind of got my attention. I've been kind of wanting to see what she was going to do based on that run in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Filly, where she was down on the inside. We've talked about how that was not where you wanted to be. I thought kind of got a rough trip in a not so great ride in the allowance race at Churchill. Then they tried on the turf. Now we're back on the dirt. You get Irad, who's been riding really well down there. Not Luis Saya as well, but he's been riding well. I don't know if you saw that, but Luis Saya's won 7 races yesterday. He won.
Yeah, unbelievable.
So, Princess Warrior for me, I think is a little bit interesting. Not sure what's going to, and I love when I like a horse that's working at Payson, so I don't have to worry about a B+ workout and the workout report kind of digging me down a little bit. So it's, I think Princess Warrior could be a little bit sneaky in this spot. But there's the Take Charge Paula, Cash, Daisy, all look like they could be ones to be reckoned with.
You say that because there is no workout report at Payson, so you hope that the whatever hype gets out that won't necessarily hurt your price.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it can, but it can also be frustrating when you want to bet a firster at Payson. In fact, a horse that I'm going to talk about later in the Florida Derby is one where when he won last time, I had no idea what I was up against because he was working at Payson.
Before we get to that, let's talk about this Pan American 1.5 miles on the turf, JK. Lots of old friends of the show in here. One I was just going to throw out there, potential wire job horse that has shown enough finish, I think, to maybe hang on if the closers can't get there. One Go, All Go, 8-1 on the morning line. Looks like should be able to clear to me anyway. And like I said, just enough pace. And, Sadler's Joy is just terrific. And I certainly wouldn't want to be losing to him in the pick 6. But, he's just obviously going to have a lot to do. Where did you land in here?
Yeah, no, I mean, Sadler's Joy always has a lot to do. I get what you're saying with one go all go. He's definitely one that if you're playing the pick six, it would be irresponsible for you not to have some kind of piece of that type of horse, just based on the fact that he's, he should be forward. There's a lot of things that are pointing in that direction. Was just beat last time by Sadler's Joy, so a lot of reasons to include. Question first, and then I'll give my thought. Do you think Sadler's Joy will be the most singled horse of the pick six sequence, or do you think that might be in the next race?
No, I think there's so many different ways to go in the big one that Sadler's Joy will be the most singled horse, even though you normally wouldn't think that of any deep closer, no matter what the class and quality. I just think the way this sequence lies, you could make an argument that he might be a little bit of an underlay just in those picks. Now, don't get me wrong. That's not going to mean I'm going to try to beat him. But I think he will be I think he's probably the shortest. Is he the shortest morning line in the sequence other than the chaotic maiden 9 to 5 that we talked about before? I think there's a very good chance that's going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. I have to use bigger picture a little bit. The horses won 5 times the distance. I won't even do the Mike Maker doing a horseshoe joke. Look, I think he's definitely one that you would want to keep an eye on with what Maker can do going a mile and a half. So, I would like to try to get away with just using those 3 outside horses. Obviously not equally. I'd want to have Sadler's Joy a little bit more than Bigger Picture, and Bigger Picture a little bit more than One Go All Go. But I think I want to have those 3. I think I'm probably okay without the inside 3 horses. I'm a little bit fearful of Bullard's Alley and High Happy. I want to dig a little bit deeper on those 2 to decide if I were to use them. But I feel like I just feel covered with those outside 3 horses.
Bullard's Alley, really cool horse. Was actually chatting with one of the owners, Farron McCubbins, this week. Tons of success in the contest world, trying to get him to come out to California. Very talented horse. Win would be no surprise, but there's no doubt looking at the PPs is a little bit like the old children's TV show. I don't remember if it was Sesame Street or Electric Company that used to do which one of these things is not like the other when you look at that graded stakes romp at Woodbine. I'm curious for your thought. Just go a little bit deeper on why you're okay fading High Happy.
Well, it's not, the horse hasn't, in America, the horse, all the kind of marathon, I guess our version of marathon races haven't all been, nothing's been great. The horse hasn't won since being in North America. Yes, I get it. The switch to Todd, but that was at a mile and an 8. So now
hasn't gotten a mile and a half on the turf.
Right. So now it's a little bit of a different situation. And we'll see. We'll double check the workout report. The horse is working at Palm Beach Downs, so the DRF Clocker report will have information about how that horse has been working. Been working on the dirt, so keep an eye out for that, because that might not tell an accurate story. But Bullard's Alley, there is one thing I will say, and I feel like we talk good enough about him, and we were trying to get him elected for president. So I don't feel too bad by saying this, but I would consider the mile and a half turf race, the switch from Paco to Irad, is probably a bit of an upgrade.
It's more what he's associated with, isn't it?
I would feel like it's an upgrade. So I think.
Oh, we may have lost Jonathan there. Very odd. Hopefully he will pop back in momentarily. Hopefully we didn't lose me, but looking at the call here, yeah, JK just dropped off there as we were talking about the Pan American Turf. We'll move on to the Florida Derby while we try to get him back. I'll just send him a quick little text and say, JK, we lost you. Reconnect. Just when I thought we were going to have a show with no incidents. JK, we lost you. Reconnect, please. Is that you?
I'm back. I'm back.
I was just vamping. I'm texting you. Let's move on to the Florida Derby, my friend. You made it sound like, okay, Audible is a shorter price on the morning line than Sadler's Joy was in the previous race. Is that the horse you were thinking might be more singled? I just don't think this looks like a race where you want to single.
No, but I feel like people like to. I feel like horses. I feel like if the horse is in the last race, he's got a better chance of getting singled. Because I think people they start looking through the sequence, they start throwing at all these other horses, and they realize like, oh damn, this is going to be expensive. Who can I single in the last?
Interesting.
And I feel like Audible is one that could get singled based on that last performance.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there'd be some reasons to. I just think it's hard at this time of year, especially when people have read so much copy about Strike Power, Promises Fulfilled, Catholic Boy. There's 3 other famous quote unquote famous horses in the race, which I do think affects people's psychology, but maybe it gets tilted back because of the fact that it's the last race. It would be fun if we could see stats on that type of thing. We can probably infer it based on the will pays when we get to this race and looking at some of the picks. But it'd be great to have the real data on that as well. I'm going to stick with Catholic Boy. I think that, the last race, it just seemed like a short horse in the stretch, should be taking a positive and forward step here. I think the setup could be excellent. Hopefully Strike Power and Promises Fulfilled, keeping each other honest on the front end. I like Catholic Boy's chances. I'm willing to pin my colors to his mast and go from there. What's your thought?
I'm going to offer you a head-to-head that you're going to giggle about, and you're going to take it.
What are we already have our, we'll come up with stakes, but what's the head-to-head?
I want Hofburg, the Juddmonte horse that's a half to emollient out of the Tappet for Bill Mott, who won off of the, I don't want to say first out. The horse started in September at Saratoga, but won off of a huge break for Mott March 3rd. And did it well, might I add. 7-1, wide trip all the way around. I think that horse is going to make another jump up. Very similar style to Catholic Boy. So we'll go, and it's an Ortiz versus an Ortiz, so it doesn't get much more fun than that.
You're right. I am going to giggle if you give it to me at even money, but it's not crazy if you want odds.
No, we'll do. So we've already got Josie's, right?
Pies and Pints, baby.
Well, Pies and Pints versus Tony's, because Pies and Pints is cheaper.
Oh, now see, there's your odds. That does become a fair bet. So I get the Pies and Pints, you get the Tony's. That's it. You think you can get us into Tony's opening weekend? Do you know people or something?
I'll call the Prince of Keeneland. He can make magic happen.
I love it. All right, let's do it. Absolutely. We'll get that one on the books. Another head-to-head. Is Hofburg your selection for the race?
No. I mean, for yes, but no. Like in a tournament situation, I would use him. He's the horse I gave out to people for to consider for their pick 6, using some price types. Audible's going to be tough. I'm kind of against Promises Fulfilled this time around.
I will say this. I looked at the stats, and these Romans 3-year-olds especially typically do improve, but I'm against as they go, but I'm against too, just pace scenario, race design-wise.
Yeah, it's Strike Power's down on the rail. What is he going to do, take back?
He's got to go.
Gotta go. Promise Fulfilled will be forwardly placed, so he'll be sitting set. The horse that's going to trip out here is Audible. He's going to get that Johnny Velasquez, Todd Pletcher trip that so many of them get. So he should be tough here. But if they happen to get a little aggressive on the front end, happen to cook up a little bit, happen to realize, we've talked about this recently, that it's a 1 1/8 race, and that these horses will be tackling that, except for Catholic Boy for the first time. It could be it could come apart a little bit, and my boy Hofburg could pick him up. He's going to pick up Catholic Boy no matter what. It's just about whether or not he's going to pick up the rest of them.
All right, JK, there you go. That's the Florida Derby. I totally forgot I had scheduled a phone call for exactly now. We did not get to our lifestyle stuff. I promise we still have time before Keeneland. We'll do it on Tuesday's show. I'm going to send us home early so I can take this other call. Hopefully that's not going to cause too much agita to producer Craig out in the studio. I want to thank you, JK. I want to thank everybody for listening. We are going to be back on Tuesday. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. May you win all your photos.